Let me ask you a direct question, and I want you to answer honestly. You don't even have to say it out loud. Just answer it in your head. Why is it that every time you start saving a little money, instead of feeling calmer, you start feeling more anxious? It sounds strange, doesn't it? Logic says the more money you have saved, the safer you should feel. But in real life, what often happens is the opposite. When your account is at zero, there's almost nothing to lose. But when you save $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, suddenly you start to feel afraid. Afraid of spending it the wrong way, afraid of needing to use it, afraid of watching that number go down, afraid of going back to zero. And this is exactly where almost everyone gets lost when they think about growing their money. Because the problem was never just the money. The problem is what happens inside your head when it starts to exist. Maybe you're tired of hearing that you need to invest, that you need to multiply your money, that you need to make your money work for you. But nobody talks about what really holds regular people back. Nobody talks about that tight feeling in your chest when you look at your balance and think, what if I mess this up? Nobody talks about the guilt of spending and the guilt of not spending. Nobody talks about the fear of investing and losing. Nobody talks about the shame of admitting you don't even know where to start. And so you stay stuck, you work, you get paid, you pay bills, there's little left over. Sometimes there's nothing left. And when there is something left, you try to save it, but it doesn't grow. It just sits there, or you dip into it, or something unexpected comes up, or you simply lose motivation because it feels like you're never getting anywhere. And I need to tell you something that can completely change the way you see this. Growing your money doesn't start with investing. It starts with emotional stability. There's a specific point where your brain stops operating in survival mode and starts operating in strategy mode. As long as you constantly afraid of running out of money, your brain doesn't want growth. It wants survival. It wants to avoid pain. It wants to avoid loss. It wants to avoid mistakes. And in that state, you don't make smart decisions. You make defensive decisions. When you save a little money, but it's still little enough to feel fragile, your brain triggers an alert. It's like it's saying, careful, this could disappear. So you overprotect that amount. Either you avoid investing because you're afraid of losing it, or you invest poorly because you're anxious to make it grow fast. In both cases, the problem isn't lack of information. It's fear. That's why, before we talk about multiplying money, we need to talk about structure. Money grows in a stable environment. And stability isn't about having a lot, it's about having clarity. Most people try to grow their money without fixing the basics. And the basics aren't complicated spreadsheets. The basics are knowing exactly how much comes in, how much goes out, where it goes, and what truly matters in your life. It sounds simple, but almost no one actually does this because looking at the numbers hurts. It shows bad choices. It shows waste. It shows impulses. It shows things you'd rather not face. But while you avoid looking, your money doesn't grow. It leaks. Growing your money starts with an uncomfortable decision, taking full control of what you already have, even if it's little. Maybe today you're thinking, but how's my money supposed to grow if I don't earn much? And that's a fair question. But here's a very dangerous mental trap. When you believe you can only grow once you earn more, you transfer all the power over your financial life to something external, to your boss, to the market, to the economy, to luck. Meanwhile, you stay in the same pattern. Growing money doesn't start with amount. It starts with behavior. If today you earn little and can't get organized, when you earn more, you still won't be organized. The only difference is the numbers will be bigger, and so will the anxiety. Because the problem was never the amount, it was the lack of a system. Think about this. Have you noticed that when money hits your account, it already has a destination before you even decide? It's already committed: rent, electricity, internet, credit card, groceries, and before you know it, there's barely any breathing room left. Then you think, when there's more left over, I'll start. But that one turns into years. Money grows when you stop relying on willpower and start creating an environment where growth is automatic. Because willpower fails, you get tired, you get discouraged, you get frustrated. But a system doesn't feel lazy. Imagine that every time you get paid a portion, even a small one, automatically goes somewhere you don't touch, without depending on your motivation that day, without depending on your mood, without depending on whether you had a tough week. That completely changes the game because you remove emotion from a decision that It should be structural. And here's the truth almost nobody talks about. In the beginning, growth is invisible, and that's discouraging. You save $100, 200, 500. It feels like nothing is happening. You look at it and think, that's it. But what you don't see is that the first thing growing isn't the money. It's your identity. You stop being the person who's constantly putting out fires and start becoming the person who builds a foundation. And that changes everything. When you have a minimum base, even if it's still small, something shifts inside you. You negotiate better. You say no to impulse purchases with less struggle. You make decisions more calmly because now you're not in total desperation. And that's when money starts to have space to truly grow. Because financial growth isn't an explosion, it's consistency. But there's a silent mistake that destroys this process. Trying to accelerate before stabilizing. You start saving, build up a little, and already want to invest in something risky because you heard someone say it pays more. You want to make up for lost time. You want to recover years in months. So you jump into something you don't fully understand. Feel insecure, check it every day, suffer with every fluctuation. And at the first scare, you pull out and you're back to emotional square one. See the pattern? It's not lack of opportunity. It's lack of financial maturity built step by step. Growing money requires strategic patience. And patience isn't passivity. It's doing the right thing long enough. If you plant a seed today and keep pulling it up every week to see if it's growing, you'll kill the plant. Money is the same. You have to create the conditions and respect the time. And the conditions are 3: control, protection, and only then growth. Control is knowing exactly what happens with every part of your money. Protection is having an emergency fund that keeps small problems from becoming tragedies. Growth is making your money earn. But most people want to start with the third step. Without control, you invest and keep going into debt. Without protection, any emergency forces you to pull out invested money at the worst time. And then you associate investing with loss when the real mistake was skipping steps. I want you to understand something very important. Money grows best when you don't desperately need it to grow. As long as you're under pressure, expecting it to fix your life, you make bad decisions. You fall for easy promises. You believe in shortcuts. You get seduced by quick gains, and you almost always pay dearly for it. Now think about the difference in mindset between someone who invests to build a future and someone who invests because they urgently need to get out of a hole. The energy is different. The decision is different. The expectation is different. And that changes the outcome. Growing money is, above all, lowering the urgency level of your financial life. And that starts small. It starts by adjusting invisible habits. It starts by creating distance between impulse and action. It starts by understanding that every dollar you save isn't just a number. It's a layer of future peace of mind. Maybe today you feel behind. Maybe you look at other people and think you started too late. Maybe you feel ashamed of having little. But growth isn't comparison. It's progression. If you have 0 and move to 1,000, you've grown infinitely more than someone who had 100,000 and moved to 105,000. But your mind doesn't see it that way because you're looking outward. And while you look outward, you ignore what you're building inside. Money grows when you stop trying to look rich and start building quiet solidity. That means making choices no one sees. It means saying no to things that bring immediate pleasure. It means accepting a lifestyle slightly below what you could afford now in order to have a much better one in the future. And I know that's not easy because you work, you try hard, you want to enjoy life. You want to feel like you deserve it, and you do deserve it. But there's a difference between conscious reward and emotional escape. Many people use consumption as anesthesia for frustration. They buy to feel better. They spend to relieve stress. Then they feel guilty. And that guilt creates more anxiety. And the anxiety leads to more spending. And the cycle never ends. Meanwhile, the money doesn't grow because growth requires intention. Deep down, growing your money is a daily decision about who you want to be 5, 10, 15 years from now. It's choosing stability over impulse. It's choosing construction over appearance. And all of this begins long before any sophisticated investment. It begins with your mindset as the owner of your own financial life. Now we're going to go deeper into the part that almost no one has the patience to hear, but it's exactly what separates people who spend their entire lives saying, one day I'll get my finances organized, from those who actually start seeing their balance grow consistently and without desperation. Once you understand that growth starts with emotional stability, the next layer is understanding that money grows best when it has a clear function. Money floating around without a defined purpose almost always turns into consumption. And consumption siente the villain, but when it happens without intention, it steals your future without you noticing. Most people get paid and see their income as one single block, one total amount. Then they pay what they have to, spend what they want, and hope something is left at the end. But that logic is flawed from the start, because what's left over is never the priority. What's left over is leftovers, and leftovers rarely build growth. If you want your money to grow, it has to stop being what's left and become what's separated first. And here's a simple but powerful shift. You don't grow financially when you invest a lot. You grow when you invest consistently. It doesn't matter if it's small at the beginning. What matters is repetition, consistency, the act of every month, without exception, setting aside a portion before any non-essential spending. And I know what you might be thinking, but it's already tight. If I take money out first, I won't have enough. But look at how your brain works. When you pay everything first and leave saving for later, any extra expense becomes an excuse to save nothing. But when you save first, your brain adapts to what remains. It starts looking for solutions, cutting excess, adjusting, because the priority changed. This isn't magic, it's behavior. And behavior shapes results. But there's another point that holds many people back: impatience with time. The feeling that it's taking too long. You start saving, and after a few months, you look at the accumulated amount and think, it's still not much. And that frustration is dangerous because it makes you want to speed things up. And when you try to accelerate without structure, you expose yourself to risks that don't match your current stage. Money grows in layers. First, you build the emergency fund that pulls you out of desperation. This fund, ISENT, meant to be invested for profit. It's meant to protect your peace. It's the money that keeps a small problem from becoming debt, that keeps a late bill from turning into interest. That keeps an unexpected expense from becoming a maxed out credit card. And when you have that layer, something shifts inside you. The pressure drops, the fear decreases. You start deciding more calmly. This is where many people feel, for the first time, what I call financial breathing. It's not wealth, it's minimum peace. And that peace is the soil where real growth begins. Because now, when you set aside money to invest, you're not gambling your survival, you're building your future. See the difference? When you invest, needing it to work no matter what, any fluctuation feels like a threat. When you invest from a solid base, you can stay calm, and staying calm is a huge advantage. Money grows more for those who stay than for those who jump in and out all the time. But let me touch on a wound few people admit. Sometimes what keeps money from growing isn't lack of income or knowledge. It's lack of life, clarity. If you don't know where you want to go, any path feels slow. If you don't have a clear goal, saving money feels like empty sacrifice. Growing money just to grow gets tiring. Growing money with purpose strengthens you. When you define that, you're building freedom of choice, building security for your family, building the ability to say no to bad situations in the future. Saving stops feeling like punishment and becomes strategy. And strategy gives meaning to effort. Now let's talk about a silent mistake that erodes growth without you noticing. Lifestyle, inflation. You earn a little more, you upgrade your lifestyle a little. Nothing crazy, just extra comfort, a small treat, an upgrade. It seems harmless, and often it is. The problem is when every raise becomes a fixed increase in expenses, then you never feel like you've moved forward. Money grows when your income grows faster than your expenses, and that requires awareness. It doesn't mean living poorly. It means not turning every achievement into a permanent obligation, because fixed obligations trap you, and trapped money doesn't grow. Another thing almost no one talks about: comparison is one of the fastest ways to sabotage your financial growth. You look at someone who seems to be doing better, investing more, building more wealth, and you start feeling behind. And that sense of being behind can lead to rushed decisions. It can push you into things you don't understand just so you don't fall behind. But money isn't a group race. It's an individual journey. You don't know the other person's history. You don't know the level of risk they're taking. You don't know how much they truly have saved versus how much is appearance. When you base your decisions on other people's lives, you lose control of your own strategy. And money grows with focus, not with distraction. Now, let me ask you another honest question. Do you trust yourself when it comes to money? Because growth requires self-confidence built on small wins. If you promise to save and don't, promise to organize and don't, promise to cut back and don't, you start doubting yourself. And that doubt creates a dangerous cycle. You think, I never followed through anyway. And you stop trying. But financial confidence isn't born from big achievements. It's born from keeping small commitments over and over. Saving a small amount every month and sticking to it for a year can completely transform how you see yourself. You start thinking, I can do this. And that feeling changes how you stand in front of money, and posture changes results. Another important point, financial growth isn't just about where you put your money. It's about how much you protect what you've already built. Avoiding unnecessary debt is a powerful way to grow money, even without investing more, because interest works against you at the same speed investments work for you. But emotionally, debt weighs much more. It steals your peace, it occupies your mind, it reduces your decision-making capacity. While you're paying high interest, your money's running backward. So sometimes the smartest way to grow your money, in the highest return investment, but eliminating what's draining your progress. Growing money is often about stopping the losses. And there's one more point that changes everything. Extra income with clear intention. Many people pursue extra income just to consume more. So effort increases, exhaustion increases, but wealth doesn't grow. But when extra income has a specific construction purpose, the effect is different. It becomes an accelerator. It's not about working yourself into exhaustion. It's about directing efforts strategically. Money grows when you combine three simple but rare things: clarity, consistency, and calm. Clarity to know where you are and where you're going. Consistency to repeat what works even when it feels slow. Calm to not panic during the phases when growth is still small. And let me tell you something directly. You don't need to be an expert to grow your money. You need to be consistent. Experts make mistakes. Markets fluctuate. The economy changes. But the simple discipline of spending less than you earn, investing the difference, and maintaining that over time has worked for decades. It's not glamorous. It's not fast. But it's powerful. At the end of the day, growing your money isn't about turning 1,000 into 1 million overnight. It's about turning disorganization into control, anxiety into clarity, impulse into strategy, fear into structure. And when that happens, growth stops being an obsession and becomes a consequence. You start noticing your balance increasing, not because you became obsessed with numbers, but because you created an environment where money no longer slips through your fingers, where every dollar has a function, where every decision is intentional. And then comes the best part, mental freedom. When you look at money as a tool instead of a threat, you start treating financial problems as logistical issues. Okay, this happened, I'll use this portion. Okay, I need to adjust here. No exaggerated drama, no desperation, no crushing guilt. That's the first true form of wealth, the ability to deal with money without it controlling your emotions. And when you reach that point, growth stops being a struggle. It becomes a natural process. So now pay very close attention to what I'm about to tell you, because this is where most people start off, right? And then quit halfway without even realizing it. You already understand that money grows with emotional stability, with an automatic system, and with consistency. But there's an invisible, silent, and extremely dangerous phase in the middle of the process. The financial boredom phase. Nobody talks about this. At the beginning, you're excited. You organize your bills. You set aside an amount. You start tracking things. It feels like you're finally doing something right. But after a few months, nothing extraordinary happens. You didn't get rich. Your life didn't change dramatically. You're still working, still paying bills, still living more or less the same way. And that's when many people think, even if they don't say it out loud, is this even worth it? This is where growth dies because money grows slowly at first. Too slowly to impress, too slowly to post about, too slowly to feel like a big breakthrough. And the human brain hates slow processes that don't deliver immediate rewards. You start feeling like you're putting in effort and getting little in return. And that feeling is dangerous because it creates space for impulsive decisions. You start thinking about speeding things up. You start looking for something that grows faster. You get distracted by promises. But solid growth is almost never exciting. It's predictable. And predictability doesn't create adrenaline. It creates security. But security is silent. And silence doesn't attract attention. So if you want your money to truly grow, you have to learn to tolerate the silence of slow progress. You have to accept that for a while. It will feel like nothing has changed, even though everything is changing internally. Because while the amount is still small, growth is discrete. But there comes a moment when time combined with consistency starts making a visible difference. That moment only arrives for those who stay. Now let me deepen an important point. Growing money isn't just about accumulating. It's about maintaining. Some people manage to save, but they can't hold on to it. They save, something comes up, and they spend it. They save, an old desire resurfaces, and they fulfill it. They save, feel like they deserve it, and dismantle part of what they built. And I'm not saying you should never use your money. That's not it. The problem is using it without strategy. There's a huge difference between spending in a planned way and spending to relieve emotion. When you use money to relieve frustration, you trade a momentary discomfort for a prolonged problem. The satisfaction passes quickly, the consequence remains, and that creates a heavy cycle. You work hard to build, then tear it down, then feel guilty, then try again, then tear it down again. Financial growth requires emotional maturity to handle the urge for immediate reward. And here's a question few people ask. Do you want growth or do you want the feeling of growth? Because they're different things. The feeling of growth is buying something that makes you look better on the outside. Real growth is increasing your invisible base. One is immediate and visible. The other is slow and silent. But guess which one sustains the future? Now, let's talk about something even deeper. Financial identity. As long as you see yourself as someone who is bad with money, as someone disorganized, as someone who never manages to save, you reinforce that behavior. Because your mind seeks coherence. If you believe you're disorganized, you act disorganized to confirm that identity. But when you start acting like someone who builds wealth, even if it's still small, your identity begins to shift. You start seeing yourself as someone who plans, someone who thinks ahead, someone who has control. And that internal shift is more powerful than any specific investment because investments can vary. Strategies can change, but identity shapes behavior permanently. Now, I want to touch on a very real pain, the feeling of being behind. Maybe you started late. Maybe you made mistakes in the past. Maybe you've lost money before. Maybe you've accumulated debt. Maybe you look at your age and think you should be much further ahead. That feeling paralyzes many people. But let me tell you, clearly, the best time to start was earlier. The second best time is now. Dwelling on the past doesn't accelerate growth. It just consumes mental energy that could be used to build. And money grows best when your mind is focused on what can be done, not on what was lost. Another silent trap is waiting for the perfect moment, waiting to earn more, waiting to pay everything off, waiting for a big surplus, waiting for absolute certainty. That perfect moment almost never comes. Growth starts imperfect, starts small, starts with doubt. And over time, you adjust. Now let's get into something very practical that few people truly apply. Dividing money by clear function. When all your money is mixed in the same account, your mind sees it as fully available. And when it looks available, the chances of spending increase. But when you separate mentally or physically what is emergency savings, what is investment, what is monthly expenses, what is planned leisure, you create clear boundaries, and clear boundaries reduce impulsive decisions. That's building financial architecture. It doesn't depend on motivation. It depends on structure. And structure protects you from yourself on weekdays because you will have weak days, days of exhaustion, days of comparison, days of frustration. And on those days, without a system, you dismantle part of what you've built. Money grows best when the right decision is the easiest one to execute. If investing depends on you remembering, you'll forget. If it depends on willpower, you'll fail. But if it's automatic, It happens even when you're discouraged. Now, let me bring a broader perspective. Money grows exponentially, but only after a long linear period. That means in the beginning, growth looks like a straight line, almost flat. But when the accumulated amount starts earning on itself, the pace changes. Almost no one reaches that point because they quit beforehand. What separates those who truly see their money grow from those who never move forward isn't intelligence. It isn't luck. It isn't a hidden secret. It's persistence. It's enduring the slow beginning. It's sticking to the plan even when it's not exciting. It's continuing when no one is applauding. And here's the major mental shift. The ultimate goal of growing your money isn't the number. It's mental freedom. It's reaching a point where an emergency doesn't steal your sleep. It's being able to make work decisions without extreme fear. It's not accepting any situation just because you desperately need the paycheck. It's treating financial problems as logistics, not tragedy. When you reach that, you realize the money growing was a consequence of something bigger. You stopped living in survival mode. And that changes how you show up in your entire life. Now, I want you to be honest with yourself. Do you want to keep living in the cycle of earn, spend, and start over? Or do you want to build a foundation that grows quietly while your mind becomes calmer and calmer? If this content makes sense to you, if at any moment you thought, that's exactly how I feel, then do this. Leave your like now because that helps this content reach more people who are also living with this anxiety in silence. Subscribe to the channel because here we don't talk about money as a magical promise. We talk about money as real construction, step by step. And I want you to comment one word to seal this commitment with yourself. Comment the word consistency. If you made it this far and comment consistency, I'll know you don't want shortcuts anymore. You want solid construction. And from today on, every time you think about quitting because it feels too slow, remember this money grows slowly for those who quit early, but it truly grows for those who stay long enough to see the process unfold.